We learn now Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, siman Kufchav Gimel. It discusses the laws of Erev Tisha B'Av, day before Tisha B'Av, Div of Tisha B'Av. These laws apply when Tisha B'Av falls out during the week, when the Eve of Tisha B'Av falls out during the week. If Erev Tisha B'Av is on Shabbos, some of the halachos are different, and that is discussed in the separate siman in Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, in siman Kufchav Hey. So he says in Sif Aleph, he says that a bris milah or pidyon haben, which falls out on Erev Tisha B'Av, on the day before Tisha B'Av, make the meal before midday, before Chatzois, which is the halachic period of exactly middle of the day. You split the day into 12 hours, based on whatever amount of time the day is. You split it into 12 parts, exactly midday. You can find on the halachic calendar the time of Chatzois. Should have the meal before then. If you're having meat during the meal, which is permissible to have in a meal of a bris milah and pidyon haben, it should be done before Chatzois. In Sif Beis, he says a person should not be metayel, he shouldn't go for a leisure, pleasurable walk on Erev Tisha B'Av, the day before Tisha B'Av, which basically, if you would translate it in today's day and age, it would mean not to go on pleasurable leisure trips or pleasurable outings and things like that the day before Tisha B'Av. And the minhag is not to learn after midday on the eve of Tisha B'Av only those things that are permissible to learn on Tisha B'Av itself, which will be discussed later on, which are the things that speak about the destruction of Beis Hamikdash and other similar types of things which are permissible to learn on Tisha B'Av. One should not learn those things that one cannot learn on Tisha B'Av. One should not learn already from the Chatzois midday on the day before Tisha B'Av. Regarding the Suda HaMafsekes, we know that there's a meal that is called Suda HaMafsekes, the meal that we break. The word HaMafsekes means from the word hefsek, that we separate, that we stop our eating before the fast. It's called the Suda HaMafsekes, which we're supposed to have before the fast begins. Suda HaMafsekes, there are a number of halachas. It's supposed to be eaten in a way of avelus, of mourning, not in a way of simcha, not in a way of tainug, of pleasure. And as we'll soon see, certain halachas that apply to the way how we eat it. We sit on the floor, and so on and so forth. The halacha says one is not allowed to eat two tafshilim. One is not allowed to eat two cooked things during that meal. In addition, there's a number of other things that are brought down that one should not eat, like ketchup or mustard, or different types of dips, or pickles, things that are eaten, that give a certain, are eaten more as a side dish, not as a basic staple, but more to add additional pleasure to the meal. One should not eat. Some poskim bring not to have a salad. In those days it was considered more of a fancy dish to serve a salad. Maybe today it's not. But we see that the meal of Suda HaMafsekes has many limitations what one can have. So therefore, in order to make things simple and practical, the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch says like this, that the best thing to do is to have a regular meal before mincha, have a meal and eat whatever a person needs to eat. And the Miskeres al Shulchan writes, obviously, in the way that one is allowed to have a meal before mincha, before one davens mincha. So if he wants to wash and have a meal, he has to make sure there's going to be somebody reminding him to daven mincha, or so on and so forth. Whatever the halachos are is discussed elsewhere. And then the bench, and then we daven mincha. During mincha, we don't say tachanun, because Tisha B'Av is called a moyed. Tisha B'Av is called a special day, even though it literally, simply means like it's a special day. It was a day that was set up for punishment, but we also know that it's also a hint that when Mashiach will come, will be a great Yom Tov. And it's actually brought down in Svarim, part of the eating of the meal which we eat before Tisha B'Av, not the Suda HaMafsekes, but this meal that we eat, the first meal which is a bit of a remez that in the times of the Beis Hamikdash they would eat a meal on Tisha B'Av to express the happiness that we have now at the Beis Hamikdash. So when Mashiach will come, obviously Tisha B'Av will be the happiest day of the year and we'll have a great meal. So Tisha B'Av is called a set day, a moyed, similar to a Yom Tov. So at any rate, what the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch is saying is that we don't say Tachanun on Tisha B'Av. So we daven mincha. After mincha, samuch l'erev, close to the time of evening, we sit down on the floor. It's best somebody, you don't have to sit down directly on the floor, at least on a low chair or whatever it is. Miskeres HaShulchan says that a pikabol is best in general not to sit directly on the floor. Should have something, towel, whatever, some material between you and the floor. We don't have to take off our shoes. And 3 people should not sit together to eat, in order that we shouldn't, because we don't make a mezuman, bench together mezuman at this meal. And all you should eat is bread with a hard-boiled cold egg, and we dip some bread in ashes, and we eat it. And the best minig is to eat basically just the bread and water, because other things, even though technically, as long as one is not eating too cooked things or things that are considered, that are idun and taino, just for enjoyment or for extra pleasure, one is allowed to eat. An example, one would be allowed to eat fruits and vegetables that are raw, that are not cooked, or let's say different baked things, as long as it's not being eaten for pleasure, whatever it might be. There are, according to halacha, there are a number of things one could eat, but we'll get into the details. Look in the pasuk; it's very nitty-gritty. Many things that one would usually eat during a meal, according to pasuk, one should not eat, and many things that are different opinions about. So if we just split it up into 2, that we have one meal, one could eat whatever he wants before he davens mincha, before he obviously, we also separate, besides mincha, we separate the 2 meals by benching. And then the second meal should just be bread and, and a hard-boiled egg and water. So like this, we don't run into questions of exactly what he could eat during the second meal. One obviously has to make sure to stop eating when it's still before the zman, before sunset. And if one finished the meal before sunset, before the zman, he could still continue, he could still drink, whatever it is, he could still eat something, but it's as long as he didn't accept upon himself clearly that he's already starting to fast. But nevertheless, it's still best to clearly make it tonight, to clearly verbalize, or whatever it is, a person should say to himself, a condition that he's not making a conscious decision that he's not accepting upon himself the fast until by benching now. So that's according to all opinions, he won't run into any problems if he wants to eat or drink anything after he benches for the Sudam Mafsekas and before the fast actually starts. After the meal is over, after Sudam Mafsekas, one is allowed to sit on a regular chair. It's only during the actual Sudam Mafsekas that we sit on the floor in the active morning. One is allowed to sit on a regular chair afterwards until the fast comes in. In Siv Daled, Kitzur Shulchan Aruch speaks about somebody that fasts on the day before Tisha B'Av for whatever reason. Some people would fast every Monday and Thursday. Other people, somebody has a yard site then. Whatever it might be, exactly how it works out, it's not a common thing, so we won't elaborate upon it. Sif Hey, the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch says that Bein HaShmoshes, once it already becomes after sunset, the period that we call Bein HaShmoshes, twilight, everything that is prohibited on Tisha B'Av already becomes prohibited from that point and onwards. That's why we have to take off the regular leather shoes before sunset, before Bein HaShmoshes. And it would appear that even though they're different, it's not clear. It seems that some people hold that sitting on a chair also is prohibited once it comes in sunset. Appears some other places, maybe from only when it actually becomes dark. But at any rate, regarding everything else, it's definitely clear that regarding eating and drinking and the other things that we'll soon see, that the prohibition starts from sunset. In siman Kuf Chav Daled, the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch continues on with speaking regarding the laws of Tisha B'Av itself. It says when it comes Sif Aleph, he says when it comes the night of Tisha B'Av, when it comes the time to daven Maitiv, so we go to shul and we take off the shoes. I mean, obviously it's already, if you're davening Maitiv after, it's already nightfall, so we take off our shoes already before sunset. But in those days they would sometimes daven Maitiv early. The minig is also, we take off the pareiches, or some people just move it on the side. We only light one candle in front of the chazan, and in other words, we minimize the lighting as act of mourning. We daven Maitiv quietly and slowly, in way of crying as people that are mourning. However, Nachem, which is a special edition, we say in the Shemoneh Esrei of Tisha B'Av, by Mincha and the Bracha of Yerushalayim, so we don't say it until Mincha. Some people say it, the Sfardim I think say it throughout all three tefillas of the day of Tisha B'Av. We only say it by Mincha on Tisha B'Av itself. After Shemoneh Esrei we say complete Kaddish, if the skabel is done regularly, then we sit down on the floor, not on, from sunset of Tisha B'Av, like I mentioned before, it's customary that we really don't sit we don't sit in regular chair. We sit on the floor or on a chair that is lower than 3 tefachim, and which is about less than 24 centimeters roughly. And we say Eicha. We light a little bit of some candles, only just enough that we should be able to say Eicha, to read Eicha and Kinnis. And we say it slowly in a way of mourning, and the Chazan reads it out loud, and he, between each Eicha, between each pasuk, he stops a bit, and a little bit more between each perek, between each chapter in Eicha, so he stops a little bit more. And in each chapter, which most of the chapters begin with Eicha, so with each chapter he says a little bit louder than the one before. And the last pasuk in each Eicha he says, that we say it with a loud voice. When it comes to the end of Eicha, to the pasuk Hashivenu Hashem Elecha, so there everybody says it together out loud, and then the Chazan finishes it off himself, and then the congregation says again Hashivenu out loud, and so to the Chazan. Afterwards we say Va'ata Kaddish. It's like we say Motzi Shabbos, so too we say on the night of Tisha B'Av, we say Va'ata Kaddish, and we say a Kaddish Shalom, complete Kaddish without the skabel. We don't say that part, the skabel, Slois and Avusn, that Hashem should accept the prayers. Why don't we say it on Tisha B'Av by night? Because it says Sasam after. Why don't we say after we read Eicha and Kinnis? The pasuk says in Eicha Sasam Tefilasi, Hashem closed up, He blocked the tefillas, the prayers. So that's why we don't say after we read Eicha the part of Kaddish which says Tiskabel Smoisain Uva'usain, that our prayer should be accepted. So too by day, by Shacharis, when we say Uvalat Tzion, after Shemoneh Esrei and Kinnis and everything, we finish off the Ashrei Uvalat Tzion. So we don't after Uvalat Tzion we skip to Skabel. We don't say to Skabel after the Kaddish, which we say after Uvalat Tzion, which on the regular day we say to Skabel. We skip that paragraph from Kaddish, and we only say it by Mincha, which Mincha is already a time of nechama, of comforting, focusing more on the Gula, the coming of Mashiach. So then we say to Skabel by Kaddish. Even somebody that is biyechida, somebody that is alone, should also say Eicha and Kinnis. Other poskim bring down that also women technically are supposed to, hear Eicha or Kinnis, whatever it is. So at least, as other people say, at least they should participate by reading Some are hearing, listening to some things about the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash, even though they can't come to shul. Sometimes they should at least listen in and whatever it is, participate in some way, either say Eicha and Kines by themselves, or at least, participate in listening or reading something about the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash. Siv Beis, he speaks about the manner of sleeping on Tisha B'Av. It says a person when he sleeps should sleep in an uncomfortable way, different than the way he sleeps in the regular night of the year. If he usually sleeps on two pillows, he should sleep only on one. Some people sleep on the floor and they put a stone underneath their heads, similar to the way when Yaakov Avinu, when he came to the Hara Miriah, when he came to the mountain where the Beis HaMikdash is built, so it says when he slept, he put a stone under his head, and then he woke, he saw the famous dream with the ladder, and he said, Manoida Hamokim Hazeh, how fearful is this place? And Midrashim say that when he said Manoida, how fearful is this place, is because he saw he prophetically saw the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash. So therefore, the night of Tisha B'Av, when we mourn the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash, some people sleep on the floor with a rack under their head. But this is all based according to what a person is able to do, whatever level of hidur, diktuk b'mitzvahs he's up to. Minik Chabad is clearly not to. Siv Gimel, Kitzur Shulchan Aruch says regarding Shacharis and Tisha B'Av, in Shacharis we don't put on tefillin, because tefillin are called pe'er, tefillin are called beauty. And on Tisha B'Av, in the morning, we're not in a state where we're like mourners, that you're not in a state of putting on things to make them beautiful. We also don't put on a talis. Gadol married men, they usually put on a talis, don't put on a talis, because it says bitzay mirosei, and like I mentioned earlier, that the Targum says Baza purpira dilei Hashem, like violated his royal robes, which the talis represents also. The Prisud de Malka represents the royal garments of Hashem, so we don't wear the talis, but we wear a regular talis, cotton, regular tzitzis, but we don't make a bracha. Some people put the talis cottons brought down in the Shulchan Aruch, the Ramah, that some people have the minute to put a talis cotton underneath their clothes in the morning of Tisha B'Av, but it seems today the minhag is not that way. In other words, even those that usually wear the talis cotton, the tzitzis above, on top of their shirt, Tisha B'Av in the morning, put it underneath until midday. But I think people say that today the minhag is not that way for whatever reason. But still, we don't make a bracha on the talis cotton. We come a bit early to shul. It's all based. Farshim say that the point is that you want to finish kinnis a little bit before chatzos, so it all should work out that one should finish, if whatever time should come to shul, the minyan should start, so they should finish kinnis a little bit before chatzos. And we don't light any candles, and we daven in a way of quiet and slow and crying way. And we say Mizmor L'Seida. One thing that he doesn't mention here, but we don't say the bracha in the morning, Shasonli called Sarki, until the next day. We skip the bracha Shasonli called Sarki, because the bracha Shasonli called Sarki is made for the shoes that we wear, and since on Tisha B'Av we don't put on the shoes, so we don't make this bracha. Also, we wash Negelwasser only until the knuckles, in other words, just the fingers themselves and not on the palm of the hand. That he's going to speak about a little bit later. But the Shliach Tzibur, when he comes to Chazaras HaShatz, he says the bracha Aneinu, between Goel Yisrael and Nefoeinu. We say a special addition that the Shatz, Shliach Tzibur, the Chazan says, Shachris Mincha, the bracha of Aneinu. If he forgot it there, then he should say it in Shemei Tefillah. It's brought on other places. If he forgot it when it's regular place, he should say it in B'Shma Keleinu, where everybody says it by Mincha on a fast. Everybody, the whole congregation says it, and they daven their own Shema Neseh. They add the paragraph of Aneinu in Shema So if the Chazan forgot to say it in its appropriate place, he should say it in Shema Keleinu. and he should finish off with the ending of both brachas together. Ein Olam Yisrael Beis Tzara, which is the ending of the bracha that he regularly says by Enenu, and Shemei Tefillah. Finished. So that's the proper way to do it. The Kitzur Shulchan Aruch goes on to say that the Chazan does not say Birchas Kohanim. Chazan usually we know says Elokeinu Elokeinu Barucheinu V'Bracham Shalashas before Sim Shalom. So the Chazan does not say that on Tisha B'Av. After Shemini Esrei is Chatzi Kaddish. We don't say Tachanun, again like we mentioned earlier, because it's called a Moyed, a special day. We take out a Sefer Torah and we read, it's a special reading of Tisha B'Av, Kisei Bonim, speaks about the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash. You have 3 aliyahs, and Kitzur Shulchan Aruch brings down a minig that I don't know if it's I don't think it's I've seen it done, at least in minig Chabad, that the one that gets an aliyah says quietly Baruch Da'ina Emes before he says the bracha. After reading of the Torah is Chatzi Kaddish, and there's Haftarah. There's Haftarah of Osei Fasifin. And the custom that the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch brings us, we say the Haftarah in the Niggin with the same tune of Eicha, and then they return the Sefer Torah. I believe minig Chabad is that we say the Haftarah of Osei Fasifin with the regular Niggin of Haftarah that we say all other Haftarahs. Afterwards we sit down on the floor and we say Kinnis, and until a little bit before midday. After midday is already, we don't say Kinnis anymore. During the time of Kinnis, Skeres HaShulchan brings down, one is not allowed to talk, because one should not be Mesiach Das. A lot of things that, certain things on Tisha B'Av are instituted that one should not set aside his mind from the morning. One is supposed to be focused on the Avelos, not be involved in other things. So one should not just sit idly and speak or go outside. One should stay in shul and participate in saying the kinnis. After they finish the kinnis, so then they say Ashrei. We don't say Lam Natseach. We say Uvalatziim. We skip the pasuk Vanizo Isprisi, because Vanizo Isprisi means this is my covenant, Hashem says. And it would be a bit funny because it seems as if we're making a covenant and all the kinnis, the lamentations that we just said. And also another reason is because in this pasuk it says Lo Yamushu Mipicha, that we say that the words of Torah will not go away from our mouth. And on Tisha B'Av we're not allowed to learn a lot of Divrei Torah. We have an obligation to learn Torah every second, as the Rebbe says, but only in those things that we're allowed to learn on Tisha B'Av. So regular Divrei Torah that we learn all days of the year, we don't learn on Tisha B'Av. So therefore we don't say this pasuk Vanizo Isprisi. However, in the house of an aval, of a mourner, Lo Yaleinu, so every year, during the whole year, besides Tisha B'Av, we say this pasuk, because even though the aval, the mourner himself, also has limitations of what Divrei Torah he could learn, but those people that are davening with him, that are coming to comfort him, are allowed to learn Torah. After V'ata Kaddish, we say complete Kaddish without the scalpel, as mentioned before, and then Aleinu and Kaddish Yasim, and the other things like Shir Shal Yom and Enkel Elokeinu and so on, and Shir Tilim and things like that are left until after Mincha, until before Mincha. For Mincha, one completes all the Shiurim that one did not say by Shacharis. In other words, let's say the Enkel Elokeinu and Shir Shal Yom, Enkel Elokeinu, Shir Tilim, and the Chitas, whatever it might be, this is all done only before Mincha. After Kinnis, it's customary that each one on his own should say Eicha. By night, people say it's customary to say Eicha along with the Chazan, or at least to sit and listen. But by day, we don't say Eicha B'tzipa, we don't say Eicha together with the Chazan in Shul. But after we finish Kinnis, everybody should say Eicha. It's brought down the Rebbe Rashab, he should say Eicha, and it should take him a long time to say it. So this is the custom for after Kinnis. In Sif Hey, Sif Dal, he speaks about an oval, a mourner, if he's allowed to go to Shul on Tisha B'Av. Sif Hey, he says, words of Torah make a person happy. Like it says, Pekudei Hashem Yisharim Misamchei Lev, the words of Hashem are just, they make the heart happy. Therefore, a person is not allowed to learn on Tisha B'Av only those things that make him sad. Like in the book of Yirmiyahu, which is a lot of prophecies about the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash, one is allowed to learn the the prophecies about punishment. However, the psukim that speak about the comfort, about the coming of Mashiach and the redemption of the Jewish people, one should skip. So too, there's also a lot of different parts in Yirmiyahu where he speaks about the punishments that Hashem will give on the nations of the world, that also one should skip. One is allowed to learn the book of Erev, famous book of Erev, which speaks about the suffering of Erev. There's a Medrash on Eicha, there's a Gemara, which in Perek Elu Megalchen, Perek Moed Kotim, speaks about the laws of a mourner and the laws of a menuda, somebody that was excommunicated. And there's a Gemara in Gittin, Perek Hanezaken, speaks about the destruction. Yerushalmi Addendum Masechta Taanis, all these things that speak about destruction or the laws of a mourner, or things, prophecies in the Tanakh and Yirmiyahu, which speaks about destruction, these things one is allowed to learn. But also those things that one is allowed to learn, one is not allowed to learn them deeply and make questions and give answers or darshan, because this already gives a person simcha. Whatever a person is allowed to learn by himself is allowed to teach children. Anything that's done as part of the Seder HaYom, in other words, in the morning, one is allowed to say Karbonis and Ezel Mekoyim, the regular things that one says before Shachris, one is allowed to say, because these are things that one regularly says in every day. It's not considered special learning, it's the learning that's part of davening. However, Seder Ma'amodas, a certain collection of different psukim and stuff that certain people have a meaning to say, so that one should not say, even if he says it every day. Again, regarding the shiurim that are common by Yos, Chitas and so on, so we do that before Mincha. Rambam seems as accepted ways to do it after the fast is over. Shetaka b'zoicha to have the Gula Mitzvah Shlema and the emes of Simcha Salev with the coming of Mashiach Tzidkenu, and Yihafchu Yom Melo Asasin Simcha L'Medim Tevim take it from Yad Mamash.